Today it's time to do some chain maintenance. I am going to hot wax my chain, and this chain waxing isn't new. It's been around since practically the late 80s. I know in the early to mid 90s it was a very popular thing to do, and I've never found it to actually last as long as they say, especially if you're riding in the wet and dirty conditions. But nowadays the waxes have gotten better, or at least they say they last 500, 600. You hear all sorts of crazy miles, and so I decided to try it again. Now I'm more of a fan of wet lubes. Now wet lubes people have issues with because it's dirty. They over lube it. It attracts a lot of dirt. But what I say is you wouldn't run wax in your car or on a motorcycle chain or things like that. And the argument cyclists come back with, well, this isn't a motorcycle or car. I would beg to differ because a lot of stress gets put on a very lightweight chain and roller. And what I've noticed with wax wet lubes anyways, like White Lightning and stuff, is you end up getting concaved rollers. And usually what that means is underneath this roller, there's not enough lubricity. Is that a word? It's not lubricated enough to where when you put tension on it, this roller is supposed to roll as it's going around the chainring. And if it's not rolling and the pin stays stationary, then it's rubbing through the tooth profile. You end up shark thinning or shark toothing your chain ring, and you end up concaving your rollers on the chain here. So this is where wet lubes work great, high torque, stuff like that. Now with the wax, the new waxes have all sorts of silicones, and I'll actually have to look it up and so I get the right terminology, but they seem to be, well, they tell you that it's you get more lubrication out of it than the old school stuff. And we will see. And I've got my pot of wax heating up over here. And you can see the edges are starting to get wet. It's going to take a few minutes. And until then, we will pull the chain off. Now, in between the hot waxing, you can re-lube your chain as long as you're putting a wax lube back on. And let me position this so where I can find the... There we go. Yeah, basically I use the... I forget what brand it is. I don't have it near me. But yeah, I use it's like a cream wax lube. And so once you start riding the chain and the chain starts to feel a little bit more loose, that means the wax is pushed out of the rollers, and then you just use a wax lube, which I will go show you. So this is the Muck Off dry lube. It goes on almost like an Elmer's glue, but then it dries pretty hard. See? And it dries fairly quick. It penetrates, has enough time to penetrate, and dries fairly quick. And it's a great way to maintain your wax chain. And now I'm looking for something to wipe my hands on. I have a chain pliers here. And what I'm going to do is pop this, there it is, that master link apart. Sometimes you could do it by hand, sometimes you could do it with a pair of channel locks, but I happen to have an actual set of pliers. These are made by Park, and you could squeeze them apart and, yeah, pop it together. I usually never use it to pop it together. Stick it in like that, and boom, there you go. And I am going to, before I lose the master link, I am just going to put them on my little shelf over here. And I'm just going to pedal the chain off, or pull it through, or however you want to do it. Pull it backwards. Any way you can get it out. Now this chain, of course, when I waxed it, which was, I don't know, a couple months ago. Let's see, what is this? End of May? So it would have been beginning of April. So yeah, 2 months. And I could still feel the wax in there. And it moves pretty free now. And it's got lots of, I don't know if that's coming in the video here. But it's got lots of free play. And you'll see it'll stiffen right up once we wax it. I have the wax almost fully melted, and I will throw my chain in it, and I am going to find something, there we go, like this pencil here, and there we go, and as the wax in the middle here, it's looking clumpy now, but it won't in a minute or two. There we go, it's a little bit more liquidy, and I will let that sit in there for a few minutes. I'll actually even move it around a bit just to make sure it penetrates into the chain. And of course, whatever wax is in there, I kind of want to melt out and replace it with new. And yeah, and once I pull it out, I will hang it up and let it cool all the way down, and we will see how that goes. Nice and liquidy now. And yeah, I'm going to pull it out, hang it up, and first let's get some supplies. Here is a better view. Hopefully. There we go. My dirty workbench. You can see that it's liquefied. I'm just rolling it around the chain. I got some supplies here to help me pull the chain out. I have a rag. I have just a piece of wire to hook the chain. And what I'm going to do is just find somewhere in the middle of the chain. It's been sitting in here, I don't know, 5 minutes or so. I've swirled it around a few times just to make sure it gets everything. And I am going to hook the chain. Try to make it straight because it's hot. Boom. Let it drip, and I'm going to just give it a slight wipe down on both sides. And we will hang it up. And I will just straighten the chain out while it's still wet. And there we go. Nice shiny chain. I'm using the Silka wax with the strip chip. The strip chip that's what makes it black. It actually is probably the only wax I know of that you can put a dirty chain in, even with old wax, and it strips the old wax, strips the old chain lubes, chain waxes out before the new ones go in. But as you can see, it doesn't come out black when you're done. And I'll give that 10-15 minutes to cool down all the way, and then I'll show you the next step. It's only been about a half hour. Chain's still warm, but you can see that the chain is already stiffening up, which is what you want. And to the touch, it's still warm, so I'm going to let it get all the way to room temperature, basically, or we'll say a cold chain. What I was saying about the wet lubes versus a wax. Wet lubes are dirtier, but if you keep your drivetrain clean and you clean your bike on a regular basis, wet lubes are good under really high torque. This is why we use them in all our machining. We use wet lubes. Waxes, like I was saying, the rollers start to get concaved when these aren't allowed to roll, or there's too much binding on that pin. So it's but with the new waxes, they say that they're better, and I could tell you this much: just in the 2 months-ish that I've waxed the chain, my whole system has been very quiet, feels smooth, and I can tell that I was starting to hear the chain noise because the chain was getting too flexy, and you know, the rollers were starting to wiggle, which means you're wearing out the wax underneath there. And I don't really know how many miles I have on it. I mean, maybe 500. But like I said, you hear people tout these really big 1,000-mile plus type miles with a wax chain. And I think if you're in the Midwest and it's super flat, or you're a city rider, don't have to put a lot of torque on, yeah, you might get those type of miles. But if you're somewhere where you have to do a lot of climbing, a lot of high torque, you're going to get less miles. And of course, rainy rides and stuff like that, you will get less miles. Okay, once this cools down, I will show you the next step. We get to break everything free, and it's actually probably one of the funnest parts of it. Now's the time for me to break this free. I figure it's been a half hour, an hour. I had lunch. You can see that the chain is very stiff. So basically, there's a couple ways you can do this. You can either break each one free like this and work it back and forth, or you can do this method. I find something that's round, and I'm just going to drape the chain over it, and I'm just going to bend it, and I'm just going to go, let me get a better angle as I'm dragging my chain on the floor. And I don't know if it's showing it, but you can see the wax coming out. There we go. And I'm just going to do that the whole distance. Any wooden dowel, a wrench in a vise, anything like that. And of course, as I get closer to my fingers, I'll just get those with my hand. Oh, there we go. Break that free. And yep, everything's starting to move because I got to where it was on the pole, and let's get this on the bike. I have most of the chain links freed up. I'm sure there's a few stiff ones here and there, but that's okay. I like to run it over the back pulley, for the guide plate. Back around the top. There's so many different ways to do this. Whichever way you can get it on is fine. I should have put my bike in the stand more solid, but this is a skip tooth ring, which means you have to get the chain on right or it won't sit. And there we go. You can see it's popping wax off, which is good. Get my quick link. Which I put on the shelf here. I might have to press the wax out. I might not just slide it in. Yeah, you can see you gotta make sure you clean the wax off of that. That way it'll snap in. There we go. I am going to pop this off and just so I have more room to work. Now, I usually don't use those pliers. I just want to make sure I get all the wax off of that. Clean the wax out of the groove. Now it should clip on. Still some wax buildup in there. I can see the pin's not pressing all the way through. There. Maybe this time. Okay, where's my cool little pliers? I've never used these to put a chain together. I usually rotate it around. I see why I don't. It's a pain in the butt, so I'll do it old school. First, we're going to get the chain on all the way. I know it's not riding, but that's okay. I just want to get it around, which it didn't work. All right, it's on there, it's on there. There it goes. Now you want to check both sides. You want to make sure that that side's in. You want to make sure that this side is in and not popping off. And it's in. I can feel it with my fingernail. In. So now we're going to do do a little zoom in. And I'm just going to rotate it and pedal it. And what it's going to do is it's going to I'm going to rotate it and pedal it. And you can see there's no stiff links. If there is, you're just going to want to shift it up and down. And you will see little pieces of wax pop out. And yeah, so the wax that was in between the creases and all that is all kind of flaking off, and after the first few rides it pretty much comes off. And then I will just get a rag and I will just wipe it down, and then you're good to go. Go pedal. So I'm just going to, like almost if you had a wet chain, to kind of just, it's more about just dusting off the broken flaky parts of the wax. And since I wiped the side plates, that's another great thing about wax chains is you could do this. Clean. And it'll keep your drivetrain quiet for quite a long time, but you do have to maintain it. It's not like you could put it on and get, not everybody can get those crazy long miles. But once it starts to get too jiggly and you start hearing rollers rattling, and you have to start maintaining it with a hot wax. I mean with a liquid wax. You do those things though, and your chain will stay clean and dry. Once you start having to apply the liquid wax to maintain it, you still do run into getting dirty when you touch it. But after a hot waxing, you get a bunch of miles, and yeah, you can walk up against it and keep everything clean. So I understand why people do like it. But I know I don't have all of my chains hot waxed. I have this bike here. I have my On One mountain bike. And the hot waxing technique seems to work good with your silver or nickel style chains, as where one of my mountain bikes has a black chain. And they say it doesn't work as well on those. And so I just use standard wet lube or T9, which is Bow Shield. That's like a liquid wax-based oil. And I have probably 5 or 6 different types of chain lubes here that I use for different things. And the truth of the matter is, I'm not too picky when it comes to brands. I just know that I want it wet and slick. The Finish Line wet lube is really slick, but it can also get really, really dirty because it stays on your chain. But if I know I'm going to be doing a high torque or a performance style ride, and I'm going to pick a wet lube, that's probably what I'm going to end up picking out of the lubes that I have. But yeah, that's how I hot wax a chain. I mean, you can watch other videos on it, and they'll basically give you other time frames and a little bit better ways to clean it up right off the bat. But this method works for me. It may not be the most precise, but like for instance, I put the chain on now after, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes of cooling down. And but I know I'm not going to ride it till tomorrow, so it's yeah, it's all, every piece of wax in there is going to harden up. So yeah, well, hopefully this was somewhat entertaining, and yeah, see ya on my next bike venture or repair. Have a good one.